The 30th installment to the MCU in chronological order takes us to Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Okay, I'm gonna do my best to try and make this review as short as I possibly can, mainly because, well, you can talk about this movie for quite a while, and not because it was good or life-changing, more along the lines of because this is a movie that, honestly, truthfully, it should not really have existed. Now, unfortunately, this movie came out during the wake of the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman, may he rest in peace, the man who portrayed T'Challa, the Black Panther in the MCU. Unfortunately, in 2020, he succumbed to cancer, leaving behind a growing legacy that was only just getting started. So pretty much, Wakanda Forever kind of deals with the fall, and Marvel had the idea to just retire and kill off the character of T'Challa instead of recasting. I am of one mind about that, which is I would not have killed off the character of T'Challa. I would have recasted the character of T'Challa. Yeah, if it was me, I would have recasted T'Challa because by doing what Marvel did for this movie, that's kind of like saying that once Christopher Reeve passed away, just retire the character of Superman, just retire the character of Clark Kent. You know, it doesn't work like that. Like these are T'Challa is not one man. T'Challa is a character that can be embodied by whoever has the integrity enough to play him, a la Clark Kent and Superman. You know, Christopher Reeve embodied Clark Kent for his generation, hence why he was the perfect role for it. Henry Cavill, as much as I do like him as an actor, and I think that his Superman was a bunch of wasted potential, he overall did fit the role of Clark Kent Superman because his real life persona that he portrays is that of somebody who can be a genuinely good Superman if given the right material. Same goes for Chadwick Boseman in Black Panther. Like, you could have found someone who embodied the same qualities as a T'Challa and recasted the role. By not recasting this role, this movie has no lead. Like, who's the lead? The lead is Shuri, and Shuri, to me, she's not a strong enough character to lead a franchise like this. And as much as I give Letitia Wright credit for trying to carry this movie, she's not that. She's not it. Like, she's really not it. I give her credit. In terms, she did not play Shuri as ultra annoying like she did in that first movie. She was much more subdued. She was much more somber. And then again, that makes a lot of sense because she's dealing this whole movie. The first couple of minutes of this movie is basically the death of T'Challa and her. In her mind, her failing to save her brother from this unnamed disease, similar to how Chadwick Boseman passed away. You know, he kept his cancer very, very hush-hush, very, very secret, and no one knew he had cancer until he unfortunately passed away. The movie tries to mirror that in a way, and I don't really like that, to be honest with you. I think there are certain things that need to be kept in real life and certain things that need to be off the movie screen, hence why, that maybe hits maybe a little too close to home. That could be almost, it almost came across as maybe a little bit disingenuous. I understand it was for good intentions. I understand it was for good intentions, but I don't know. That didn't really sit right with me. And I'm normally somebody who doesn't mind real life bleeding into fiction, but there are certain things that you should keep hush hush, and that you should really just keep alone. A man dying from cancer, and then you want to exploit that in this movie by calling it an unnamed disease, I would not have gone that far. But anyway, that pretty much sets up Shuri's character arc into her eventual picking up the mantle of Black Panther. And like I said, I thought Letitia Wright, she was fine as Shuri in this movie. She didn't play her up as ultra annoying. I mean, she did have some of those typical annoying one-liners and groaners that are just not funny. But to me, Letitia Wright doesn't have the charismatic presence to helm a movie. She's a side character who's being forced into as a lead, and you can tell that it just doesn't work. Like, her acting talents and abilities are not meant to be a lead actor. She just doesn't have that quality to her. Throughout watching this movie, I could tell you 3 characters who could have took up the mantle of Black Panther because they have the presence and they can pull it off. Winston Duke, who portrays the character of M'Baku, who is my favorite character out of the entire Black Panther franchise. I think M'Baku was a badass. I would have loved to have seen him pick up the mantle of Black Panther. And hopefully in a third movie, Shuri, that could happen, because I don't think Shuri is not the right choice. Especially when you get to the third act of the movie and stuff like that. It's basically a really poor man's retread of Civil War, and I just didn't really buy it. Where Civil War had a build up and a heart to it, this one felt more like it was just retreading it in a very disingenuous way, as in order to make you feel for Shuri as a character. I didn't like that whatsoever, and I'll get to that when I get to that momentarily. But like I was saying, I think Winston Duke, would have made a better Black Panther. I actually, not only that, I think M'Baku should have gotten more screen time in this movie. To be honest with you, like I like seeing the scenes that Winston Duke is in. He's got a lot of funny moments. He's got a lot of cool badass moments. I like the scene where he's pleading the case about how the Wakandans should kill Namor and the Takulan because because they're an underwater. They have vibranium just like the Wakandans do, and they pretty much have the technology to take down the Wakandans. So I like that scene. I thought Winston Duke did a good job, and I just like the physicality of Winston Duke in general, which is why I think he could have been a better Black Panther. Okoye, played by Michonne from The Walking Dead, she's a member of the Dira Mirage. She's a battle-hardened veteran on the field. She could have made a good Black Panther. And lastly, give it to Lupita Nyong'o. Like if you're so desperate to have a woman play Black Panther for some bizarre reason, because you have to female everything with the MCU has to womanize everything, at least give it to a character where it fits. Like Okoye and Nakia, it would fit those two characters because they're warriors. They're battle hardened. They can handle themselves. They know how to fight. Those are the two of the best characters that can actually pull it off. I think Lupita Nyong'o, who is a very good actress, and I liked her in the first Black Panther, I agree with most people. She's actually really wasted in this movie. She doesn't really have a whole lot to do until you get to the third act, and when you get to the mid-credit scene where she tells Shuri about a secret that she's been hiding. But that's pretty much it. Like, Nyong'o doesn't really have anything to do in this movie, which is a shame because this movie is overall dealing with the death of T'Challa. You would think that Nakia would be a prime focal point, since that she's essentially T'Challa's love interest, and that she would have more of a role. Instead, her role is kind of minuscule when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, because Shuri takes up so much space. Her character takes up so much space, everyone else kind of suffers. You have Angela Bessette, who returns as the Queen of Wakanda. And now everyone has been overpraising Angela Bessette for putting on this fantastic and great performance in this movie. Listen, was her performance good? Absolutely. Did it deserve all the praise that it was getting? I would not go that far. She wasn't doing that good of a job. I mean, let's be real. The only real good scene she has is where she's screaming to the Wakandan Council about how she lost all her family. That's pretty much it. You take that scene out of the movie, she's doing a paint-by-numbers performance that's no different than what she did in the first Black Panther movie. Let's stop overrating performances that are not as good as they seem. She's good, but not fantastic. And no, I would not have given her an Oscar for this movie because her performance, again, was not that good. She showed good range and emotion, but not enough to wow me. Like, I've seen better performances in superhero movies, and Angela Bessette was not one of them. Good, not great. In terms of the villain, Namor, played by Tenoch Huerta. Listen, I am not overly familiar with the character of Namor. I don't have much of a connection to the character of Namor. I know he's a mutant. I know he's a former X-Men, and the movie touches light on Namor being a mutant because of the way he was born. But as an overall threat and as an overall presence, I thought the actor playing Namor was okay. He didn't really wow me. He didn't really woe me. I like the whole idea of the Wakandans and the Takulan having this rivalry, like the surface world of Wakanda against the underwater nation. Then that can make for a good rivalry. However, you needed T'Challa in order to make the rivalry with Namor work. Especially if you're gonna do a surface world versus the underwater world, and you're going to portray Namor as Magneto. You already have T'Challa, who you establish as, more or less as a version of Professor Xavier. You try to give it to Shuri, and I just wasn't buying it. I don't think Letitia Wright and Harada their screen time was okay. It wasn't anything all that special. The movie tried to make it off. I don't know, for some reason, my mind was going in the direction of, so these two are going to have a romance? Because, I don't know, I think it's the way they were directed and the way some of the dialogue was delivered. It just kind of felt a little clunky, in my opinion. And like I said, I thought the actor playing Namor, he was all right. I think he was maybe a little too subdued and didn't really have all that much of emotion to him as well. I mean, I do like some aspects of the Namor character. Like his backstory is okay, though Ryan Coogler put in some things I thought was absolutely dreadful. Like, did I really need to see a young Namor going to a plantation to see a bunch of to see a bunch of slaves? No, I did not. I did not need to see this. Take this out of the movie. It doesn't serve me any. It doesn't serve anything. Now, you could. What Namor saw on the surface could have easily been done if he just saw war and chaos happening instead of slavery. That's like the whole slavery angle is so cheap and so just like a clutch. It's getting ridiculous seeing it now. Like, come on, man, get off it. But yeah, that partially inspires Namor to have a grudge against the surface world because of what they did to his people. And stuff like that, and the fact that his name means he was a child born out of love, which doesn't really make any sense because he had a mother and his mother loved him. So I don't understand why you have to call him have his name mean a child born out of love, and when he was a child born to love. I mean, when Namor was being born, his village, his mother's village, was being ravaged and plagued, and it had this special elixir that that prevented death or and had the potential to save their lives, and she refused to take this because she didn't want her unborn baby to potentially die. That's love. Your mother loved you when you were not even born yet. So the whole meaning of Namor's name doesn't make any sense to me, and it's kind of really stupid. Like, it is kind of stupid. I will say this though. When I think Namor's best scenes are when he's acting off Angela Bessette. I think that's where he shines a little better. And again, I do, for the most part, okay, I overall like the exposition dump when he's telling Shuri his backstory, so that way we can get to know a little bit about him. Like, Ryan Coogler is trying to go the sympathy route, but unlike with Killmonger, where it just didn't make sense, I understand it this time around with the character of Namor. And so I think Namor is a better written villain when compared to Killmonger, because Killmonger's motivations didn't make any sense. At least with Namor, it makes a semblance of sense, because he's trying to protect his people by any means necessary. And if that means joining up the Wakandans in order to have more power against the surface world, then he's going to do so. So on that aspect, okay, I get it. But there are also other aspects where Namor can come across like a dummy. and that makes him into a dummy villain as well, because he gets outsmarted in some areas. So yeah. So Namor as a villain, it's a mixed bag. Some of it is okay, and some of it is just whatever. In terms of more other supporting characters, this movie introduces us to Riri Williams, Ironheart. Listen, I've never read an Ironheart comic book. I have no desire to read an Ironheart comic book. From what I've seen and what I've heard, Riri is a terrible character. Like, she's a very terrible character. From what everyone tells me, she's Tony Stark, but without the charm. And yeah, I kind of get the sense of that when I'm watching this, when I saw this. I mean, she didn't come across as overly annoying, but she didn't come across as likable either. Particularly, there's a scene where Riri and Okoye are in a garage killing cops, and there was no call to kill these cops. So why is this? Why am I seeing this? Why is this happening? And this movie doesn't really give a full explanation as to how she's able to create these things. With Tony Stark, they at least gave you an explanation. Like, Tony Stark, his father's Howard Stark. His father was already a genius inventor, so it makes sense that Howard Stark would, encourage would encourage and show Tony how to do certain things. The movie just says that her stepfather always wanted to build planes, and that inspired Riri to want to do science stuff like that. Like, that's not a good enough explanation as to how she knows all this stuff. This movie pretty much presents her as a child prodigy who was just born smart, and that was it. Tony Stark was born smart, but he wasn't perfect. but he was also extremely flawed. Hence why Iron Man is a better written character, and why Riri Williams is potentially going down the path of being another hated character from the new Marvel era, who's just not going to hit it home. You could have taken Riri Williams out of this. Yeah, you could have taken Riri out of this movie and it would have been the same exact thing, because her inclusion is more of a plot contrivance. So the whole reason why Riri's in this movie is because she built this device, that's like a tracking device or something like that. I can't exactly remember what it was, but Namor and his people, they view it as a threat for the surface world to potentially attack them. So that's hence why they are after, hence why they are after Riri. You could have easily took this and gave it to Nakia or gave it to Shuri, and it would have been the exact same movie. Riri is pretty much superfluous. If Riri does not belong in this movie, you can tell she was forced and she's a contrivance, and her screen time takes away from characters who deserved it more, which is M'Baku and Nakia. So yeah, Riri, as it turns of a character, she wasn't overly annoying, but her presence was annoying, and her jokes were just not funny at all. She was absolutely cringe. I am not familiar with Dominique Thorne as an actress, but what I saw here, I am not looking forward to her solo TV show, and I'm only going to be watching it just so I can provide content for this YouTube channel, because if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be watching half these Marvel shows that come out, because none of them have been good. And Ironheart, after watching this, Ironheart has the potential to be another show that's just not going to be good. So yeah, at the end of the day, Riri kind of sucks as a character. She's kind of useless. Her bantering with Shuri can get annoying at times. Her making fun of Okoye was not funny. And just having her having like that typical, black girl ghetto-ness to her, it was not cool at all. Like, her humor sucked. Like, her humor really sucked. I would say that. And the Ironheart costume, it is what it is. It looked all right. I mean, it looked like a discount version of the Iron Man suit, which is, again, that's what Riri is in the comic book. She's a discount Iron Man without the charm, and that's what her suit looked like. It looked like a discount Iron Man suit without the charm and without the charm and cool factor. So yeah, those are basically my thoughts on the cast and the characters. Basically, mixed bag. Some is good, some is bad. In terms of the action sequences, I think Ryan Coogler this time around got more comfortable doing the action sequences. I like the scene of Namor and his people attacking this Wakandan outreach center, which I actually thought was a cool scene and had like a nice suspense factor to it, and the music really heightened it as being especially like intense in a lot of areas. I thought that was well handled. Namor's invasion of Wakanda which led to the eventual killing of Ramonda. I thought that was actually pretty well handled, and it really showed that Namor is somebody who is who is not afraid to do whatever it is necessary to make sure his people are safe, no matter what. I thought that was okay. And the entire third act of the Wakandans taking down Namor and working with Namor and his forces, along with Martin Freeman, who makes his return as Everett Ross. That is what it was. It was okay. It was decent. The final fight scene with Shuri and the Black Panther suit. By the way, Shuri looked horrendous in that Black Panther suit. It looked god awful. I mean, she looks like a skinny toothpick, and I cannot buy the fact that she can handle Namor. Not only that, when Shuri takes the orb, she sees Killmonger in the astral plane. Okay. Good to see Michael B. Jordan, I guess, but I don't like the character of Killmonger. I think he sucks. Basically, Killmonger just tells Shuri to do what you gotta do by any means necessary. Basically, telling her just to kill, putting it in more ways than one. Again, why do people like Killmonger so much? He's a shitty villain. He's a shitty character. He was terribly written. His motivations make no sense. But what this movie tried to do, and what Ryan Coogler tried to do, is that he tried to give Shuri the same character arc T'Challa had in Civil War, but while that was organic, this is inorganic. And it really shows when she's about to do the kill shot on Namor, and then she starts to have flashbacks to her brother, and that's what convinces her to stop. You see, T'Challa was different. T'Challa chose not to kill Baron Zemo, because after having a conversation with Zemo and understanding where Zemo came from, that's when T'Challa chose to not have revenge consume him. Shuri is different. She just had flashbacks of her brother, and that made her stop. Like, she just felt sad and started crying. Like, she didn't have this grand awakening that made her stop or made her want to question her perspective. She just stopped. Okay, I thought that was kind of lame. But I do like the whole, and then the Wakandans and Namor, and they kind of have a truce at the end of the movie. But it also teases the fact that another fight between these two could happen again, since Namor lives. And he pretty much tells his people that now that they have an alliance with Wakanda, that makes them powerful to go against all their enemies. Like, okay, whatever. And like I said, then you have the mid-credit scene with Nakia revealing to Shuri that her and T'Challa had this secret child named Tursant, who is now T'Challa Jr., basically. and that sets up a young T'Challa to take on the mantle of Black Panther eventually. Uh, so yeah, you have all that going on, and like I said, a lot of this movie's writing, I can understand where Ryan Coogler is coming from. Like he tries, like this movie does have a somber, earnest tone all throughout, so I'll give it that. It's tonally consistent for the most part, and even though I think a lot of the jokes just don't hit home for me, at least they dialed it down and they took it serious. Like this movie did have nice tributes to Chadwick Boseman, both in the beginning for the most part and at the end as well. But everything else sandwiched in between is a movie that just feels directionless because it doesn't have a main anchor. It doesn't have its main star. You have an actress in Letitia Wright who is just not ready for that. Who is just not an actress that can carry a movie like this. You needed someone with more on-screen presence, like a Winston Duke or a Lupita Nyong'o or a Danny Greer, Okoye, and actors that can actually like hold a movie down. Letitia Wright, to me, she does not have that quality. She does not have that presence, and she just looked god awful in the costume. Yes, like aesthetically, she just looked really, really bad in the Black Panther suit. Hence why I think somebody with a more warrior-like pedigree, like a Nakia or an M'Baku, should have been given the mantle of Black Panther. Not saying Shuri couldn't go to the same character arc she did in this movie, but yes, have her go on that character arc where she's in denial about her brother's death, and then have her finally accept it at the end. That you can keep. That was actually one of the better aspects of this movie, and that's where Letitia Wright's performance was actually really, really good. Just seeing how she's able to handle all the grief and how it just makes her bitter. That stuff I actually did enjoy for the most part, and I thought Wright did a good performance. Hence why I thought she was much better this time around as opposed to her first movie, where she's too busy acting like an unfunny clown, having really groaners as one-liners. Not to say this movie didn't have any groaners, because it did. Once again, every time I see Everett Ross, they keep calling him a colonizer. Can we stop with this colonizer joke? It was not funny the first time. It ain't funny this time. It's only funny to people who have the mental capacity of a kindergartner. And we also have Julia Louis-Dreyfus reprising her role as Val, who is now director of the CIA. Val, she debuted in Winter Soldier, in the Falcon Winter Soldier, and she had a cameo at the end of Black Widow. Basically, Val is being portrayed as an antithesis to Nick Fury, which is going to eventually lead to her creating the Thunderbolts. That's basically the direction it looks like they're taking her character in. But yeah, the movie kind of establishes that her and Ross used to be married, and they have like a kind of a rocky relationship and stuff like that. That is what it is. Like you could took that subplot out of the movie, and it wouldn't have made a difference. The fact this movie runs nearly 3 hours is ridiculous, because you could have taken 20 minutes out of this movie and it would have been fine. Hell, just take Riri Williams' entire character out of this movie, and it probably would have been better off for it. So yeah. So listen, when all is said and done, do I hate Black Panther: Wakanda Forever? No, I do not. I don't hate this movie. I'm not a fan of this movie, and then again, I was not much of a fan of the first Black Panther movie, but I like the first one as opposed to this one. Like I said, this movie's biggest problem is that it does not have an anchor. It doesn't have Chadwick Boseman. It doesn't have a lead. It doesn't have a star. It just feels directionless, and it feels like they're just making excuses to keep the Black Panther name going. And by not recasting T'Challa, you kind of put your back against the corner. Because now what are you going to do? What, you're going to roll with Shuri? It's not going to get over much. Like, yeah, it got over this time because it's dealing with the fallout of T'Challa. But now that that's all settled and done with, I don't think you're not going to get the results you think you're going to get. And that's my opinion only. So, with all that being said, I'm just going to give Black Panther: Wakanda Forever a solid 5 out of 10. Half the movie, when the movie is dealing with T'Challa and the death and showing tribute to his character, I like it. It's very earnest. It's very touching. I mean, it could be emotionally manipulative in a lot of ways, and that emotional manipulation can manipulate you throughout the entire movie. But if you actually watch this movie without that manipulation, yeah, it's a mess. Like it is. This movie really is a mess that is trying to do so many different things, but it just doesn't know how to tie it all together because there's nothing to tie it to. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more. Oh, and a quick side note. Wakanda Forever was also the conclusion of Marvel Phase 4. And if you watched all the movies of Phase 4, it absolutely built up and led to absolutely nothing. There was no grand finale to Phase 4, just this movie. Yeah, at least Phase 1 built to something and was about something. Phase 4, I don't know what Phase 4 was about. Phase 4 would maybe, you could say Phase 4 was about building up the multiverse, but aside from Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, none of the mainline movies actually made reference to the multiverse. And hell, most of the buildup was done through these stupid Disney Plus shows, and hardly of them ever get reference in mainline. Loki being the with Loki being the biggest one about the multiverse and shit like that. So yeah, having Wakanda Forever be the conclusion to Phase 4 with nothing, while at the same time building up to absolutely nothing. Come on, man. You can do better than this. And that's all I got to say.